for some reason, potatoes have infiltrated my life recently. It sounds probably worse than it is. I don't eat a ton of potatoes. I haven't eaten a ton of potatoes or anything, but they've been showing up everywhere. I just recently first read and then watched the movie The Martian. Have you ever seen The Martian?
I have not.
Okay, well, I will not spoil it for you because it is very good. Potatoes, however, are very important in that book and movie. And I got to say, if you haven't watched it, if you haven't read it, this is to everyone out there. The book, the movie, it's very good. It's really, really good. So it's definitely on the recommended list. I will recommend it to you. I think it was awesome. Book, obviously, I thought was better than the movie, but the movie was great too. But I've always liked potatoes, okay? I really like mashed potatoes. That's my favorite way to consume a potato. But I like them all. Baked, sliced, roasted. Like, I love a potato. I think they're very good. But that book taught me a lot more about the nutritional value of a potato. How it's healthy, how it's got calories, it's got sustenance to keep it going. At least the movie would have me believe that. But that's not all that a potato is, it turns out. Apparently, it's also a great tool to measure volume. Oh. And not just any old normal measurement of volume. I'm talking about the volume of personal storage space in your car. Like your glove box, your cup holders, your console, that kind of stuff, right? And it's referred to as the PSC, or the Potato Storage Capacity Score. And here's the thing. I recently ran across this. This is not, in fact, it's no one uses it. I'm saying like literally no one uses this, except I recently ran across a suggested Facebook post on a suggested Facebook page that I have no idea what it even was on, but it was a very small scale, not very popular car reviewer from New Zealand who reviews electric vehicles that goes by the name Kiwi EV. He reviews random, not very many. I don't know if he's just a normal guy who rents them. I don't know. I couldn't find that much information about him. But he gives every EV he rates a PSC score, a Potato Storage Capacity Score. And here's the thing. I know it's ridiculous, but you like to know how much personal storage space there is in a car. You like to know, can I keep my entire purse in the glove box, right? Yeah. You like to know, can I keep a 32-ounce soda in the cup holder? You like to know these things. Yeah. And so he has done this simply for us by creating the PSC, the Potato Storage Capacity Score. From what I could find from my just relatively deep dive into his Reddit account, which he is a part of a group, same name as him, with like slightly over 100 users. It's not a big group. So like I said, I would not call him popular. I don't know anything about him. Don't know what his name other than he goes by Kiwi EV. But he rated the new electric Jeep Avenger, the Tesla Model Y, the MG4 EV, as well as the electric Lotus Electra, which I don't even know what that last one is. I've never heard of it. I know what a Lotus is, but I've never heard
Lotus
of the Electra.
Was even around.
Yeah, they don't. I don't think they're like super mass produced anything, but they still make cars. They just came out with a new one apparently very recently. But he gave all of those a PSC, and to make me happy, which I really enjoy finding out, the Tesla tops that list with a number that certainly pleases our friend Elon Musk. 69 potatoes. And that is followed directly by the Lotus, then the MG4, then the Jeep. He's got photo proof of all this, right? So there's just a photo of him sitting in the car with potatoes in every crevice there can be. Wow. And it's just kind of fun, right? And I don't know whether to thank Kiwi EV or to be upset with him, because honestly, this is a measurement that I'm going to need from now on. I don't ever have plans of traveling with groups of single potatoes in all of the places in my car, but I need to know, and now I need to know, in the event that it is ever necessary, how many I can expect to safely transport.
Welcome to the Factoid Podcast. You didn't ask for it, but we're going to tell you about it anyways. My name is Payton Gessel.
And I'm Chris Humphreys.
So, Amy just got a new computer recently, and lately she's been producing a lot of her own music on it. And while she has decades of experience of performing music and comes from a family of a lot of musicians, I can't say that I do. I just got my DNA test back a couple of days ago, and it did say that there's a 50% chance that I could be able to match a pitch on command. And I did test this out, and I was able to do it. Okay, it was a lot easier than I expected. But yeah, like it. At least I have passed that hurdle. So it's not like I have zero musical talent. Sure. But compared to her and her family, they obviously have a lot. And I mean, I will give my family credit. Like, I mean, my parents met in high school band class, so they're my siblings all played. But for the most part, my siblings and I all kind of dropped off playing musical instruments in middle school or high school. And for me, my problem was that I was playing the trumpet, but I wished I could play the synthesizer in band. I
Yeah.
thought that was just a much cooler instrument. There's like all the tech elements, they look futuristic, and they were in a lot of the music that I liked. And it was weren't a lot of popular songs coming out on the trumpet in 2009 or whatever. So it was, I kind of fell off of that. But now that we have all of these, like basically a limitless amount of creative tools at our disposal,
Mm-hmm.
Amy and I have both been trying to make as much music as we can. So she's making these beautiful orchestral soundtracks, and then I sit down and try to make some rap beats. So like the day before the Super Bowl, I say, I'm going to make Yeah by Usher. I want to see if I can make Yeah. That's a song that sounds like it was probably very simply produced.
Sure.
And I find a YouTube tutorial, and within a couple of hours, I was able to make something that sounds like kind of a karaoke version that like you hear it and you know what it is, but you can tell it's not the exact same.
Sure.
Obviously no vocals in it. And then the other day I was told about that some people have started to do speed runs of producing simple rap songs in specifically Crank That by Soulja Boy
Oh, yeah.
in FL Studio. How long do you think it takes to
Oh.
speed run creating that song, which I'll say ahead of time, it is made with all default FL Studio loops or samples.
Really?
So what is the top
Man,
speed run?
I don't know how to. I know about speed runs. You know what I mean? I know how crazy they are, but it's really hard to know. Does this mean like rendering and everything? Or
No. So
Okay.
it is playback in the program.
Okay.
So it starts, you have to load. The three stages are you load all of the, load your files, then you sequence, and then you like place them all down on the timeline.
Oh man. I mean, I would assume just like a couple minutes.
15 seconds.
15 seconds? No way.
There was a YouTuber who started it as a joke, and he was doing it like 40 seconds, and then people took him up on trying to see if they could do it better. But yeah, we yesterday I watched a video, and it was a guy in 15 seconds.
So you can legitimately just recreate Soulja Boy exactly with FL Studios loops?
Absolutely.
That is so cool.
Yeah. It's
I didn't
crazy.
know that. That's very cool.
Right. And I thought I had heard a rumor that was that way, which is why I tried to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like ultimately there, I can get close to it, but there are some things that are different.
Right.
But when I was sitting down, by myself trying to make I eventually, I got the synthesizer, the dun 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 dun, I got that part done, and then I needed to add the percussion, and I needed to use a drum machine for that, and not just any drum machine, but I needed to use the Roland TR-808 drum machine.
Okay.
Yes. Are you familiar with that?
I not like specifically, but I know that is like, I feel like that's a standard go-to.
Yes, for sure. Have you ever used a drum machine?
Yeah,
a
little bit.
And that's what I was curious about. Is like I was a little bit like nervous about doing this episode because Chris has a lot more musical experience than I do, and I'm worried that you're going to be like, oh yeah, I know all these things. I've played all of these, but
I'm like very surface level at any of this stuff. So I do know I know very basics, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. So I would, so I sat down and I was, working with the 808 and trying to put all of, putting that into the track. And I was going through the list of all of the 808 instruments that are inside of the drum machine. And there are 16 different sounds that come out of the drum machine. So first we have the bass drum, the snare, low tom, mid tom, high tom, low conga, mid conga, high conga, rim shot, the claves or claves, I've been seeing it a few different ways, hand clap, maracas, cymbal, open hi-hat, closed hi-hat, and one more. What do you think that is?
I don't know.
It's the cowbell.
That's a cowbell.
That is a cowbell, and that is the reaction that everyone has when they hear that specific 808 instrument. I didn't know what it was for the longest time, and until like a month ago, I recognized this. Oh, it's the thing from the Whitney Houston I want to dance with somebody.
Right.
Or like I heard it in other songs, but I didn't know what it was. And eventually I learned that is the cowbell.
Isn't it crazy that that's the best they could do back in the day? Like trying to
Absolutely.
make a sound digitally.
Exactly.
I'm not like, obviously that is iconic.
Yeah.
But that is not a cowbell.
No, not at all. And the part that really puzzled me, that kind of set me down this path, was how did farming and cows mix with hip hop music? Like, how did these two groups, like cows are in the country. Hip hop doesn't happen a lot in the country. Like, how did how did enough cows with bells hang out with people, like, for that to mix? And I did read that there was, in the 1800s, there were urban dairies where they did have cows in the middle of big cities.
No way.
The milk was gross, and it was like really contaminated, and like the cows were eating garbage, and it was not good. So that is not that's not how the cowbell got into rap music. But I did try to read into it, and I was able to get some answers. So as you can imagine, the cowbell instrument is based off of the bell that used to hang on, and still does hang on a cow's neck. I imagine most cows don't have them anymore, but I'm sure there's probably some like retro farmer out there who's like, yeah, I still have a cowbell.
Or like touristy farms.
Oh
where
yeah,
they're wearing
that's
like a bow and a cowbell.
Her name is Bessie.
That's right. When they jingle when they walk up.
Right. And what I learned is that there are different size bells for different size cows, and there isn't some universal standard. But if a farmer wants to be able to tell their best prized cow from the other cows, obviously, like their markings of their body might be one way, but having the different bell pitch might alert you to know that your good one is nearby, or even just the difference between the bulls and the cows, having different types of bells. And composer Richard Strauss is kind of the first person credited to use a cowbell in a musical piece, and he grew up in Bavaria in southern Germany, and he had this tone poem called An Alpine Symphony, and he had cowbells in along with the other instruments because he wanted to try to make it remind people of what his home sounded like, where he would hear cows in the pastures nearby. And eventually this makes it across into North America. Latin American music has a lot of cowbell early on, and later on as well, and this kind of gets mixed in with some pop music and jazz and funk and rock music. 70s and 80s had a ton of rock cowbell. And I think the most famous example of this is Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult, which was the song that the SNL skit about More Cowbell came from. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So obviously the More Cowbell skit with Will Ferrell and Christopher Walken had the Blue Oyster Cult, and they're performing this song, and Will Ferrell's playing the cowbell really, really loud, and Christopher Walken's the producer, and he says, I just need more cowbell, and he's just wailing on the cowbell. And I think that skit really kind of showed what place the cowbell has had in society over the years, and that it is a goofy instrument. It is not supposed to be taken seriously. And I also watched a YouTube video where Chad Smith, who's the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, was doing like some sponsored content with one of these cowbell manufacturers. So he just plays a bunch of common cowbell rock drum songs. And it's funny because Chad Smith is known for looking a lot like Will Ferrell. So all the comments are just like Will Ferrell jokes. But one thing that Chad Smith says in the middle of the video is that if you're going to put a cowbell in your song, you are trying to signal to your audience you're going to have a fun time, and it's going to be a party song. So I want to move to Tokyo, Japan in the late 70s with the company Roland. Roland was started by Yukitaro Kakahashi, and at the time, he and his company are making organs. They're making a lot of kind of piano-ish adjacent instruments, and sometimes they have a metronome built in so you can help keep time. But the consumers kept asking for a little bit more. They would ask for a more complicated percussion beat than just the metronome playing. And then eventually they started asking, can we program our own drum beats to go with our organ? And that's when Roland decided in 1980 to release the TR-808 as an analog drum machine that is standalone from the organ. And it reviews really poorly, does not do well, sells 12,000 units and gets canceled. Yeah. As you can imagine, one of the big criticisms was that the instruments sound really fake.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and it was originally not meant to even be used in final musical pieces. They had pitched it as being something to create a demo.
Sure.
Like, I don't have a drummer yet. I'll record something with him later. For now, I'm going to drop in, my little, my snare, bass drum and stuff. So, and what's also funny about the amount of units they sold is that they bought 12,000 transistors in bulk that were slightly faulty, and they got them for cheap. And part of the reason that the 808 sounds the way it does is because of that, part of the flaws in that transistor. So when they ran out of it, it wasn't selling well, but also they couldn't
even do it again.
No, yeah, they just had to stop. Like percussion instruments, they, from talking to Amy, she has a degree in percussion, so I ran a lot of this by her, that percussion instruments are, they can be tuned to be a different pitch, but they aren't really meant to be different pitches at the same time or to rotate between them. Like, if I want to play a different note on this drum, I'm going to grab a different drum that's that note.
Right.
And I guess the timpani is kind of the main exception to that. But for the most part, if I want a higher pitched drum, I'm not twisting knobs or holding something down to get that. So if you listen to all the notes on the 808, almost none of them really have any tonality to them, where it is, it's a pretty flat, I don't know, there's not a lot of melody to it. And the only real instrument on the 808 that has anything like that is the cowbell, because it is actually two different notes that form a perfect fifth. So it is a 540 hertz square wave and an 800 hertz square wave, and they have there's a band pass filter and a couple other things applied to it, but basically it's the equivalent of playing a C note and a G note together. Mm-hmm. And because it has a couple of notes sort of combined compared to a snare drum that doesn't have a lot, that it just adds a little bit more, it feels a lot fuller than the other instruments on the 808, which then comes in handy when the hip hop scene in the 70s and 80s start to use them. A lot of a lot of early hip hop took place at parties in big cities, and the main idea was that everyone is dancing and they're listening to records and they're singing and things like that. And eventually, kind of modern hip hop things that start to come out of that, scratching records intentionally or breakdancing, or talking over an instrumental of a funk track, which that's kind of what leads to the idea of rapping. And eventually rapping the Sugar Hill Gang is kind of what people consider to be the first real hip hop group, and they realized that there wasn't enough mainstream appeal for having someone on stage playing record samples and rapping on top of it. So they said, we need to have a full band. We're going to have guitar, bass, drums, and then we're instead of a singer, we're going to have a rapper, basically. And not everyone could afford to do that. And the Sugar Hill Gang was able to. So they inspired a generation of musicians to try this genre, but they are trying to find a way to have a backing band. And they all go to pawn shops, and they're buying these used drum machines that no one cares about, and they're all buying 808s. And then they end up starting to use them and take a liking to them. And in some ways, the cowbell is able to replace having an extra instrument that has more of that melody to it, because obviously you're not really changing the notes on the cowbell here, but it's a little bit more than just drums,
right?
Basically. And by the late 80s, this starts to become a big hit in hip hop and in other different music. So for example, Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody is a big one. Marvin Gaye is using an 808. Phil Collins is using an 808. And a lot of these people want the 808 because they don't like other people, and they want to limit the amount of people in the room with them to make decisions. And Phil Collins is one of the more famous singer/drummers out there. Mm-hmm. And he says if you tell a drummer to just play the same thing for 4 minutes and it doesn't change, they're going to get bored and they're going to get angry at you. But if I tell the 808 to play it for 4 minutes, it doesn't care. So yeah, hip hop is obviously the big genre that latched onto the 808. There are bands like Run DMC and the Beastie Boys on the East Coast that are using it. NWA is using it on the West Coast. But the 808, specifically the cowbell, is the king in Southern hip hop. And I have the Outkast album Speakerboxxx The Love Below at home on vinyl, and I was listening to it because I thought, I'm going to listen to some more Southern rap just to to refresh on the cowbell and see how many times I hear it. And there were so many times I didn't even think about it before, but I'm just cackling as I'm listening to this album that won album of the year as a Grammy 20 years ago. And It's just cowbell all over it. And the 808 cowbell, it is, even today, it can still be heard, ringing around the world. I was listening to Spotify, and I am someone who does not pay for a lot of paid tiers, and I get a lot of ads on services. We've discussed this before that Chris is very in the realm of no ads, and I, for some reason, don't. I just keep the ads. But I get to learn things like there's a Planet Fitness ad that has a Megan Thee Stallion song in it that has the cowbell. So I'm just listening to music at work, and there's the 808 cowbell. And then a few days later, I get an ad for Disney World, and it is using the 808 and it's using the cowbell.
Huh.
I'm at a restaurant, and I just hear the opening to I Want to Dance with Somebody, and my ears are basically tuned to cowbell at this point where I'm able to pick it out of a crowd. And I think maybe the most bizarre cowbell thing that I've ran into is that there's a whole genre devoted to just the cowbell. It is called fonk music.
Fonk.
Phonk. It is so big it even has subgenres. There's one called drift fonk, and it's like music that you would drift your street racing car to. And these guys learned how to pitch the cowbell so that it is now put onto a keyboard, and you are playing complex melodies with arguably the most unnecessary, weirdest part of this instrument. So if you like what you've heard today about, the 808 and the cowbell, you can buy an original Roland TR 808 on eBay for $5,000 to $10,000.
Oh, wow.
They are, the affordable price of $5,000 to $10,000. They did release a miniature a few years ago. I think it's maybe a few $100s. I know Behringer, they have a knockoff of the 808 that they sell, a few $100s. Or you can go online and download 1 million plugins that people have made where you can sample the 808 for free. And from all of the research that I've done on the 808 cowbell, I will say that I have developed a bit of a fever in that time. And the only real prescription that I have for it is more cowbell.
Payton, are you a user of food delivery service apps like Uber Eats or DoorDash or Grubhub or whatever?
Occasionally. I think there is a valid time and place to use them.
Sure.
There are times when I think it's not necessary. I live close enough to a lot of restaurants where if I am within a 15-minute drive, I will probably just drive myself there. But yeah, if you have people coming over to your house and you can't leave, or especially if you have a young child, I imagine that, that has to be a lifesaver for young parents, especially if it's a weekend and they're watching the kid by themselves, just getting delivered. So I would say I'm getting food delivered, if you count pizza in there too, maybe once every 2 months.
Okay. That's good. That's probably good. We talked actually about it a couple episodes ago. Kirsten and I have been consuming a ton of financial content, right?
Yes.
And honestly, it's partially because of finances that we almost never anymore use delivery service apps. Occasionally we'll order a pizza, like you said, and I almost feel like pizza might even lie on the outside of that because they usually have their own delivery service, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Not always, but sometimes they do. But sometimes at random, we'll order a place that we're not, we haven't been for a while, or we're not going to go to, or but part of it is the expense. Part of it is also we live in the middle of nowhere, so there's not a ton of places that we can even get it from, that aren't it's prohibitive just to really even do that here. And I'm not saying I'm this old guy here, but yeah, we do it once in a while. And every single time we do it, no matter when in the last 2 years, it actually blows my mind how much it costs. Every time. I'm not saying this as this old guy, okay? But I am saying that I remember when you used to be able to DoorDash or Grubhub and use those promotionals that would be as cheap as going to the restaurant. It'd be buy $10, get $10 off, or a free delivery, and it would actually cost you, I could buy a $5 box at KFC, and they would deliver it to me for free with this promo. Of course, you had to use the promos right and everything.
Right.
But there were the times where you could actually get food for what you'd pay at the restaurant, and they deliver it to you. Totally worth it. I took advantage of those very often, right? But this is not the world we live in today. I don't know, you don't do it that often, right?
Yeah.
That is not how it is today. But I feel like we've lived through like the good times and the bad times of some things, right? And like I said, I'm not an old person here, right? But technology and services like this, they pop up and they change all the time, right? Do you know what Movie Pass is?
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember that?
I did not do it, but I know people that did, and I think wasn't the narrative that everyone was waiting for the company to just go
I'm
under?
in the exact same boat. I didn't do it because literally when people told me about it, I was like, that's stupid. That's not going to work. There's no way. It was like $15 a month and you could go to any movie ever.
Yeah.
Like, you could just go to the movies.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure at the beginning of it, there was no limits. You could go any day of the week, any time of the week, go to any movie, right? At any theater. It was like this thing where it was like, that's no way that's going to happen. And then, so I never got it, which honestly, thinking about it now, probably missed out. Really. Because like you said, I think people were like under the impression that like, I have to do this now because this is going to change. And soon enough, but surprisingly longer than you would have assumed. It did change. And like, they started putting stipulations of you can go to this many movies a week if you go on weekdays, and you can go to a weekend movie this many times, and you can get a discount if you want to go at this time. And if the movie's popular enough or expecting enough viewers and you can't go to this one for 2 weeks, whatever. It started adding things like that. The price went up. And then it started being limited because movie theater chains started realizing, why am I not just doing this for myself? So places like AMC or Cinemark started coming out with like, oh, AMC, whatever it's called. Like they all have their own thing now,
Of
right?
course,
AMC has their own, you pay the monthly and you can watch an AMC movie and you can get popcorn with it. And Cinemark has, you can go to the Cinemark and get whatever, right? They have their own things because when people realize there's money to be made, they make the money. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And so this small company, I don't really know what happened to it. I think they probably should have really tried to get bought out. I don't know if they did that or not. I'm not really sure. I didn't look into it, but I just remember, all I'm saying here is like, I remember the good old days of this thing, right? And I feel like it's the same way with delivery apps. But if there's money to be made, people will make it. When it comes to delivery, what's crazy is like when you're ordering through these apps, and I'm not judging anybody here, okay? So if you order on these all the time, please, more power to you. I'm not trying to stop you. But when I order on like DoorDash, it feels like it's like such a good experience. They really have a great app. They have a great interface. Grubhub, all this stuff. It's really good to use, right? And it feels like a great experience until you get to the last screen where they add on the delivery fee and the convenience fee and the service fee and the taxes and the mandatory 10% tip or whatever, right? And your meal that costs $23 when you put it in your box costs $41 now. And it's like, so you end up buying a Chipotle bowl that I know that I get when I go to Chipotle all the time that costs $11.97, and it ends up costing me $21.37 because of all this stuff, right? And again, this hasn't stopped me sometimes, right? I understand. Sometimes it's just like, I think it's worth $9 to not move or whatever. And I think that's what happens with everyone. And it's not really a problem, but in all these finance things, they're like, you must cut out, you know what I mean? Like the necessary stuff, right?
Right.
I think if I was you, if I lived where you were, I would probably fall victim to using this stuff way more than I do, because you live in like food paradise compared to where I live.
Yes.
You're surrounded by like...
It is fun, and I know that there are plenty of people around me who do it a lot more than I do. One of my coworkers was talking recently about, I think she said that it is almost a weekly occurrence at this point. And, if you live around a lot of places like that, it is hard to resist the siren song of get food sent to me right now.
Yeah, and it's like I don't feel... How many people with any kind of job who come home at night think, I really want to get out all my dishes and all the food and prepare this thing that I can eat? No one thinks that immediately when you get home.
Right.
But it's really easy to say like, well, tonight I'll just order this food from this place I like. It's very easy. I'm not judging anyone, please. But that's how it is. It's just so expensive. The actual menu prices, there's no, like, they don't have to make them the same as they are in the store.
No, yeah.
So like they also just cost more to start with, and then you pay high fees on all of that. It's just crazy, right? This is not how it used to be. And during this entire time, the prices are going up and fees are getting added and all this stuff is coming in and everything's getting more expensive. Everybody is joining these companies to become drivers, right? So like Uber Eats drivers, because it's a good and easy, and in your own time, it's not necessarily easy, but it's like you can set your own schedule. You could do this as you want to do it, right? And so more and more people are joining every day to become a driver, which is good for the drivers because, oh yeah, then I get a job, but it's also bad for the other drivers because now they're competing with more of them, right? And then the more and more drivers you get, the more and more money the companies have to bring in to pay all these drivers at least a livable kind of wage. And so the prices have to go up, so their service fees get higher. So it's really good for the drivers, they get more money, but it's not good for the people buying the food. But eventually it becomes not good for the people buying the food, not good for the drivers. The only people who are making any money is the company that does this, right?
Yes.
And this is a thing that happens in business. I'm not trying to break down business or anything like that, but that's just kind of how this is going, right? And this is a problem. And where there's a problem to be solved, someone usually tries to solve it, which is cool. I'm glad people are like that. Well, in Seattle, there's a man with a bike who has decided to solve this problem. And is he going to fix the problem for the whole world? I don't think so. I don't think he is. But in Seattle, there's a man named Tony who saw this problem, and he said, I am going to fix it. He was an Uber Eats driver. He actually delivered over 9,000 orders. He had a 98+ rating, 98+% rating on Uber Eats. But the longer he went, the less orders he started to get, the less money he started to make, the more he would have to travel outside of where he wanted to go to pick up the food because there was all these competing orders. Sometimes he would have to wait hours and hours before he would even get another order. This was his livelihood. This is what he had done for work, and he decided that he couldn't live in this anymore. So he decided to do his own thing.
Tony eats.
Tony delivers.
Oh.
Coming to a city near you. Except it's not coming to a city near you, and that's actually the beauty of it all, okay? Tony charges a $5 flat fee to deliver people food. $5 flat
Great.
fee, no other fee. And he has a very distinct and exact radius that he is willing to travel within. He rides his bike. He does it the same. It's very well listed, and it is in Seattle. It is very, very local. He knows his audience. He knows what he's doing. He's done all this delivery before, but Tony has started Tony Delivers. And here's what's interesting is I'm not talking about he's built this crazy system, this beautiful app for everyone to use. He does not have a Tony Delivers app. He does not have this beautiful web development team that creates this thing. He did it his own way. He made a website, okay? And can I tell you the process? You're reading about it, it sounds like right now.
I'm trying to look at the range. I want to see if there's any place that I've been to in Seattle that I could get it from.
It's like very specific downtown locations.
Yeah, it's Belltown. So this is near like the Space Needle. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff here that you could definitely.
Yes.
Yeah,
And in a city like that, there's going to be, it works out for him, I'm sure, because there's a ton of people and there's a ton of restaurants all within that radius, right? Lots of high rises, whatever. Like there's tons of that stuff.
People who need lunch who are working in a skyscraper.
Exactly. And so Tony decided, how do I do this, right? He thought to himself, well, why is no one doing this? And then he thought, why am I not doing this? And so he just decided to do it. And here's how it works. He delivers between the hours 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. and then from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day. That's his schedule.
That's great.
Exactly.
6-hour workday.
Exactly. And this is how it works. You tell him your name, your address, and the restaurant you want, okay? And he'll respond to you, and he'll get back to you with his availability. Like, can you, and if you can order now, he'll say you can order now, and if you need to wait 20 minutes, you wait 20 minutes, right? But then when he says you can order, what you do is go to the website of the restaurant that you want to order from, order your own food, pay for your own food. So you have to be able to order and pay online completely and say, pick up.
Yeah.
Which obviously, like, probably almost anywhere in this kind of area is going to do that, right?
Yeah.
But you order it yourself. You make your own order. You do your own thing. You text him when it's going to be ready. He rides his bike over, picks it up, delivers it to you, and you pay him $5. And of course, tipping is optional. You can tip. I'm sure people tip him.
I hope so.
I'm sure people tip him because the fact of the matter is a $5 fee on top of the actual order price of the food is like an insane difference to what you're paying with these delivery apps.
Yep.
And you can see on his website, there's like a bunch of testimonials at the bottom that are like, Postmates was going to charge me $48.77, but Tony Delivers charged me $29.77. And it's like, I saved $20 today or whatever, right?
Right.
And it's brilliant. It's brilliant because from what I understand, from everything I've read, he's not incredibly like open about all his personal finances or anything. But from what it sounds like, he makes more money, works less, and just enjoys his life generally more and doesn't have to work for a huge corporation.
Absolutely.
Tony has figured out how to do what he loves to do for himself and make his city a better place. So if you happen to live in downtown Seattle in SIU, Belltown, Westlake, Cascade, or Lower Queen Anne, I'm going to recommend, I haven't been, I'm going to recommend that you try out Tony Delivers. I think people might have thought it was weird at first because it's like a random guy. He probably started with like those pull tab signs.
Oh, yeah.
With his text me an order and I'll deliver it to you. It's like, yeah, okay, that's weird. But I think as soon as someone tried and realized I just paid $5 for what I normally pay $20 for, I think it kind of picked up quickly.
Word
right?
of mouth, I have to imagine. Hey, did you know this way that you can still get all of your takeout and not waste a bunch of money?
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
And he's going to have as much business as he wants for as long as he wants it. I'm sure people are getting turned away at this point, especially since he's getting some kind of news coverage, like a little bit. But I would expect this to pop up more than just with Tony, and in more cities than in just Seattle, if it hasn't already. I don't know if it has, but it seems like maybe a good way for people who enjoy, interaction with people, who enjoy a nice bike ride. It seems like a good way to maybe get into the biz. I don't know. But I hope that people would have this mindset more often, because we talked about like big companies, right? And it's all about money, money, money. And I understand that's how the world works. We live in a capitalistic society where Americans, whatever. Like I get that that's how it is. But I feel like some of my favorite people and some of my favorite like businesses are places that have just decided I'm going to do what I like at the level that I like and make enough money that I can do what I like at the level that I like and not try to move past that.
Yeah, no, what I mean, I think the impulse, if you are someone like Tony, or if you're hearing about this, is to say, well, Tony's got so much work coming in, he should hire a second person.
Exactly.
He should have a company. Oh no, now he needs to have like an accountant, and then there's no one should. You don't have to do that.
No, but Tony can make $65,000 a year forever without ever marketing or ever working hard at his job again. Like, I'm just making up numbers. I have no idea, right? It's probably more than that, honestly. I don't know.
In Seattle, probably, yeah.
And it's like it seems like everybody eventually falls into we have to grow into this new thing. But I just love that he has done this thing and he's done it well. And he like talks about how like, he's like, people just thank me. Like, I'm so glad you're doing this. This is great. And he's like, I love making people feel happy. It's just such a cool thing. And it's really cool that it's as simple as that. I just get a bike, make a website. Literally anybody can do both of those things. It would be harder to deliver with a bike in Cardington. Mm-hmm. I also don't think I would get the amount of work that Tony gets in Cardington. However, I suppose maybe it's worth a try. I don't know. Even though I'm sure anyone who has money or cares about economics probably disagrees with me, it's not all about the money you make. It's about having a sustainable thing that works for you and that you love, that you don't have to mess with.
Thank you for listening to the Factoid Podcast. As a reminder, our next episode is going to be another listener episode. We are very excited for it, and we can't wait to get some questions from you guys. And this is your last chance to send in any questions, and we would love to answer them for you, and we'll have a fun time doing it.
And as always, guys, you can find us everywhere you get your podcasts or on our website, factoidpodcast.com.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.